Welcome to Fluentish, the podcast. Season 1 of this show is called The Bilingual Blueprint, From Hesitation to Conversation, and you've tuned into episode 3, where we are addressing the question, but how do I pick the right language or languages for me?
If you're new here, I'm Rebecca, founder and author at Little Crab Educational Press. I've been learning Mandarin for over 20 years, and I love oat milk mochas.
I'm Lisa, co-owner and graphic designer at Little Crab Educational Press, a French language learner, Rebecca's little sister, and I have an irrational fear of air dancing tube people.
We firmly believe that language learning is for everyone, so you won't find any language snobbery here. Whether you want to be fluent or are happy being fluent-ish, just come as you are, whatever your level.
We're here to cheer you on. This episode of Fluentish, the podcast, is brought to you by Flowdesk, our favorite email marketing tool. Flowdesk keeps everything on brand, is easy to use, beautifully designed, and seamless. And Flowdesk does not punish you for growing your business. Start for free and then enjoy unlimited emails and subscribers for one flat rate. Get excited for powerful yet intuitive and affordable email list building. Use the link flowdesk.com/c/littlecrabpress to get 50% off your first year of Flowdesk. Okay, Rebecca, the barrier for this episode is basically decision fatigue. As our resident CELTA certified language teacher, what would you say when the question comes up, but how do I pick the right language or languages for me?
This reminds me of the TV show Say Yes to the Dress.
Okay.
And the consultants, are supposed to help the brides pick a dress, right? And you get to the store and there's thousands of dresses there. And unless the bride already knows what she wants, those episodes are always funny because I'm kind of yelling at the screen, like, why won't you give them some criteria to help narrow down the thousands of dresses to what they want? If I was on that show, I would be asking, is it an outdoor wedding or an indoor wedding? Are you going to be dancing or do you not dance at all? Are you going to have a messy dinner or like an easy to eat dinner? Is it going to be a sandy beach and then you come inside, or a rocky beach? Because that can affect
Choose.
Some people are going to go on vibes with a language choice, which is great. Like, I like the sound of that, so I'm a learn it.
Right.
And have no other reasons. Just like some brides just pick a dress they like the look of and give no thought to the venue or the time of day or the type of wedding activities that'll be going on. But some language learners don't want to just go on vibes when picking a language to commit to. When the going gets tougher and you hit a plateau in your studies, some learners like to lean on the fact that they had well thought out reasons for their pick. And that keeps them progressing on the same path because they believe that the grass wouldn't necessarily be greener somewhere else. So where do you start? There are, of course, those silly online quizzes, and, they're fun to do. You should do them just for fun. They ask questions like, they ask unserious questions like, what do you like better, wine or a margarita?
Perhaps Italian, perhaps Spanish.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, no, baijiu is not why I started learning Mandarin. So there's a few language quizzes you can try. There's Babbel's language quiz, Sololingual's language quiz, Joy of Languages, CR Languages, and Mundly language quiz. If you want to have some fun, give them a shot. But you aren't necessarily going to have a result that you feel like, oh, that was a well-vetted decision, like at the end of it. So
yes, focus, clarity, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. So we have something fun and actually useful to show you, viewers and listeners, that should help you discover new languages to try and start to see more clearly your own reasons for or against one over another. I've created a pretty substantial framework for thinking through the decision about what language to learn next that is thorough and rigorous, but also super fun to do. And in doing it, you'll discover things about yourself and your interests that you didn't know before. Our framework takes you way beyond the superficial, do you like baguettes? type of stuff. So I am going to explain the overall sections of the quiz and some of the reasons for certain questions that are on it, but I won't go through every question here. So instead, we'll drop a link to our newsletter in the show notes. So if you sign up, you'll get a PDF of the whole activity and you can download it and try it for yourself.
We want to give you a framework that functions similar to a quiz, but of course, we can't account for every possible outcome. So we won't go through the whole thing line by line in the podcast. We will send you the background info, quizzes, and ChatGPT prompts so you can run your decisions through the framework and get your own personalized result, which will help you finally home in on the best next language for you to learn. And keep in mind, there's no reason not to learn one language purely based on vibes and then learn another based on our framework. It would be fun to observe how the method for choosing a language affects your experience in learning the language.
Mm-hmm. The first step is you look at the whole pie before you find your slice. So how many spoken languages are learnable in 2025? As of 2025, there are approximately 7,100 spoken languages in the world. However, this number is always changing due to language evolution, revitalization efforts, and language endangerment. Of those, around 100 languages are spoken by millions of people, while many others are spoken by very small communities.
Right. So in terms of learnability, the number of languages available for learners depends on factors like resources, teachers, and technology. While major languages like English, Spanish, and French are widely taught, thousands of smaller languages have limited learning materials. However, AI and digital tools like Duolingo, LingQ, and YouTube content creators are expanding the accessibility of many languages.
The second thing to think about is find your families. Here's why understanding language families helps learners. For one, it can lead to easier language learning. Learning Spanish makes French easier because they share grammar and vocabulary. Cultural connections. Understanding language roots helps connect with different cultures. And thirdly, expanded learning options. Knowing which languages are related can help learners choose secondary languages more efficiently.
Here's an overview of the world's major language families. Languages are grouped into families based on shared ancestry. Here are some of the main language families, along with examples of widely spoken languages in each. So remember, this list is not exhaustive, but it has 11 major language families, which covers a lot of territory. If you are not already listening to this podcast at 1.5 or 2 times speed, we won't mind if you speed through this list. We're going to read it because it helps establish the fuller scope of what we're talking about.
You ready, word nerds?
Ooh. The first major language family on this list is Indo-European, over 3 billion speakers worldwide, the largest and most widely spoken language family covering Europe, the Americas, South Asia, and parts of the Middle East.
By the way, there are minor branches such as Baltic, which includes Latvian and Lithuanian, but you can look up the rest later if you want. The major branches are as follows: Germanic, Romance, Slavic, Indo-Iranian, Celtic, and Hellenic. So Germanic is English, German, Dutch, Swedish. Romance is Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian. Slavic is Russian, Polish, Ukrainian, Serbian. Indo-Iranian is Hindi, Bengali, Persian, Pashto. Celtic is Irish, Welsh, and Scottish Gaelic. And Hellenic is Greek. Again, we're giving you the bird's eye view of this stuff.
Number 2 on this list is Sino-Tibetan, 1.5 plus billion speakers worldwide, a vast family of languages spoken across East Asia and parts of South Asia.
So the major languages in this one is Sinitic, which would be Mandarin, Cantonese, Hokkien, and Tibeto-Burman. So there's Burmese and Tibetan.
Number 3, Niger-Congo, 700 plus million speakers, the largest language family in Africa, covering languages from the West, Central, and Southern Africa.
Major languages in this one would be Swahili, Yoruba, Igbo, Zulu, Shona, and Wolof.
Which are just beautiful to listen to.
Yeah.
It's just like
Igbo.
the names of them
Yeah.
are lovely. Number 4, Afro-Asiatic, 500 plus million speakers. Languages spoken in North America, the Middle East, and parts of the Horn of Africa.
Major languages there would be Arabic, Hebrew, Amharic, and Hausa.
Number 5, Austronesian, 400 plus million speakers. Covers languages spoken in Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands, and Madagascar.
Major languages: Tagalog or Filipino, Javanese, Malay, Indonesian, Hawaiian, and Modi.
I love Tagalog. I love listening. I don't understand any of it, but oh my gosh, it sounds so good. Number 6, Dravidian. 250 plus million speakers, spoken mainly in southern India and parts of Sri Lanka.
The languages in this family would be Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam.
Number 7, Turkic. 200 plus million speakers, languages from Turkey through Central Asia and into Siberia.
So major languages would be Turkish, Uzbek, Kazakh, and Azerbaijani.
Number 8, Uralic. 25 plus million speakers, mostly found in Northern and Eastern Europe.
So major languages in this family would be Finnish, Hungarian, and Estonian.
Number 9, Koreanic. 75 plus million speakers, a small but significant language family with Korean as its only widely spoken language. Number 10, Japonic. 125 plus million speakers, primarily includes Japanese and the endangered, and I am possibly going to say this incorrectly, I apologize, Ryukyuan languages of Okinawa. Number 11, indigenous and isolated language families. There are many smaller language families and language isolates, including
Basque, which is in Europe, and it's a language isolate with no known relatives. Quechuan and Aymaran from South America. Mayan languages in Central America. Algonquin and Siouan languages in North America. Pama-Nyungan in Australia. And, of course, here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada, there are approximately 34 distinct Indigenous languages spoken, belonging to 7 main language families. BC is the most linguistically diverse province in Canada in terms of Indigenous languages. The language family that stretches across the vast territory where we are recording this podcast is called Salishan. Where I am, local First Nations speak Lekwungen, and where Lisa lives, and you'll be seeing her in future episodes when we do this remotely, they speak a dialect of the Halko-Milim language.
All right, list done if you want to put us back at normal speed. So we started with look at the whole pie before you find your slice and find your family or families, which means the first activity related part of this framework is to notice where and how English is categorized in the tree of human languages. Like right now, you're understanding an Indo-European Germanic language. If you imagine the tree of languages, or you can look an image of one up on the internet, you can now ask yourself about the branches.
Many, if not most people, get annoyed by anything to do with grammar, and they think that they don't like grammar rules because they associate it with dry, boring study that's far removed from the fun of actual, authentic communication. But when you're choosing a language to learn, it still benefits you to be aware of the basics, such as what does parts of speech mean again, so that you can get a sense of how other languages differ from and how they are similar to, in this case, English. If you've forgotten, parts of speech are just the categories for words based on their definitions and roles in sentences, like run, jump, and skip are action words, and we call those verbs. Peter, St. Petersburg, and Pete Moss is a person, a place, and a thing. So those were all nouns. If you forget that a and an and the are called articles, that's okay. If you knew they were in a group that's called something, it's a lot easier to find the material that will help you study them. As long as you are aware they exist, you'll already be able to navigate language learning way more easily, and also not be intimidated when your next language uses parts of speech that, in this case, English does not. Lisa, can you please tell the listeners what are the key features of English and other languages in the same Indo-European branch of the tree of languages?
Why, I'd love to, Rebecca.
Oh.
Some key features of English-like languages are that they use clear word order, subject, verb, object, have distinct nouns, verbs, adjectives, and prepositions, often use articles a, and the. Their verb tenses are indicated through conjugation as well as auxiliary verbs. Examples. Okay, polyglots out there, I bet you already know these groups. The Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian. Germanic languages, German, Dutch, Swedish. The Slavic languages, Russian, Polish, though with more flexible word order. And the Indo-Iranian languages, Hindi, Persian, though Hindi has postpositions instead of prepositions.
So, to you, dear listener, who is a native English speaker or close enough to it, I say you may choose to learn a new language that is close to English precisely because it's already close to English. But you by no means have to choose a language close to English for you to have any hope of success. The main point is that some languages just fit your brain. Who knows why? That was my experience comparing Spanish to Mandarin. Part of why I love Mandarin and have stuck with it for more than 20 years is because when I first was listening to it with the idea that I might be learning it, I just fell in love with the sound, and it wasn't hard for me to produce the sounds. There's 9 or 10 special sounds in Mandarin that are particularly hard for English speakers. Zhi, zhi, shi, zi, zi, si, ji, qi, xi, and zhi.
Check out our YouTube channel for a video on this.
Yeah. And so a lot of people who speak English have a hard time with those. I didn't so much. But with Spanish, I didn't have trouble with pronunciation, but speaking it made me giggle and feel embarrassed and stuff like that.
So feel funny on the inside.
Exactly. You would think that as a native English speaker, Spanish would be easier for me, but it wasn't. I mean, maybe if I stuck with it longer, I don't know, but Mandarin was the one that just fit my brain. So even though it's in a whole separate language family than English, I still found Mandarin to be close enough to English in ways that made enough sense to me. And it made Mandarin feel accessible enough to me to keep going.
We actually put together a YouTube video on that topic as well, where we can find commonalities between Mandarin and English. So if you are Mandarin curious, check that out.
Back to that what if I am just not good at languages question. Again, did you figure out if you are better off sticking to the same branch of languages as English, or would you do better if you branched out? So we just talked about Indo-European languages, and then the next group underneath that was the isolating languages, which are from East and Southeast Asia. The key features of an isolating language would be the words don't change form, so there's few or no inflections for tense or number or case. The word order matters more than word endings. Heavy use of particles instead of prepositions or conjunctions, and they often have tonal pronunciation. So you can probably guess now, I'm going to say the Signitic family, which is the Chinese family, Mandarin, Cantonese, Hokkien. Then there's Austroasiatic, Vietnamese, and Khmer, and Austronesian, Indonesian, Tagalog. Fun fact, out of the isolating languages family, the ones that are most English-like are Mandarin and Indonesian. There's no verb conjugations in either of those languages, but it's funny to me when people say Mandarin is the hardest language in the world to learn. I'm like, have you looked at all 7,100? Because there's lots of stuff about Mandarin and English that overlap. So, sometimes it takes a little bit more research.
So fun! I think Icelandic and Icelandic and Welsh, I'm just like...
Totally. So the most challenging for English speakers from that category would be Vietnamese or Cantonese because of the tones and the classifiers. With that long list of language families we just went through, hopefully you'll see now that there is a way to look top down at the challenge of finding a new language to learn rather than just kind of aimlessly taking a stab in the dark. The next step is we have created 2 quizzes that will help funnel you toward answers that you can actually take some action on.
The first quiz is efficient because rather than asking you if you like Japanese sake over Italian vino, it gets you thinking about your goals, interests, and abilities at the same time. Right now, we'll give you an overview, but remember, you can get it and do it for yourself in full by signing up for the newsletter through the podcast page at littlecrabpress.ca. The first quiz is set up to get you thinking about the 7 language skills, which are reading, writing, handwriting, and writing composition, and for some languages, spelling, grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, and speaking. Depending on your goals and what you would find fulfilling, you may not feel the need to learn a language to a native speaker level of all of these skills. Perhaps you will discover a language you want to be literate in, but don't care to be conversant in. Latin comes to mind for a few reasons. Or perhaps you realize you just want to be able to socialize in person and over text messages, and so handwriting is not crucial to you in achieving your goal, which would make a character-based language like Mandarin more accessible. If you want to be completely fluent in all 7 language skills for your new language, then doing this quiz will help a person who wants to be fluent just as much as the person who wants to be
Fluentish. So the first quiz has a set of questions. The first question is, what kind of listening experience do you prefer? So some of the things that you can check off in this one would be languages with clear pronunciation and minimal variation between written and spoken forms. So Indo-European is handy for that. And a Niger-Congo language, which is Swahili, is also like that. You might pick languages with tonal distinctions where pitch changes meaning. So Sino-Tibetan, Mandarin, Cantonese, Vietnamese, and also Niger-Congo languages like Yoruba and Zulu.
In English, we only do that for sarcasm.
And there's more things to check under this listening category. The next question is, what kind of reading experience do you prefer? So, for example, do you want to do character-based reading, which are meaning-based rather than sound-based? So under Sino-Tibetan, there's Chinese, and Japonic, there's Japanese kanji. Or you might say, I prefer oral traditions over written literature. So indigenous languages would be good for that, like Salishan, Inuit, Yupik, Mohawk, etc. Or syllabary languages, so Japonic languages, some indigenous languages, Uralic languages, so Hiragana, Katakana, Cree, Cherokee, Inuktitut, etc. Question number 4, what kind of handwriting experience do you prefer? Simple, familiar letter forms similar to English, then you'd want to go with the Indo-European, French, Germanic, Spanish, etc. You could maybe pick logographic or mixed writing system. There's thousands of characters, obviously Chinese, Hanzi, and Japanese kanji. You might want to do right to left or alternative script directions like Afro-Asiatic languages like Arabic or Hebrew. Again, there's more choices. Question 5 is, how structured do you want your composition to be? So for example, do you want writing sentences and paragraphs? So maybe you pick that you want the grammar rules to be similar to English, such as using subject, verb, object order, clear punctuation, etc. You might choose to have flexible word order but logical structure. So that would be the Slavic languages like Russian and Polish. And there's more, obviously. Another one would be zero or minimal writing focus, so oral or storytelling traditions, in which case you'd go with indigenous languages like Mohawk or Inuktitut or American Sign Language. Number 6, how much grammar complexity are you comfortable with? Obviously, there are simple verb tenses and structures like in Mandarin Chinese or Austronesian languages. Maybe you want moderate complexity with some irregularities like Spanish or French, or maybe extremely rich and complex grammar like polysynthetic languages or Turkic. And then question 7, what kind of pronunciation challenges are you comfortable with? You might choose mostly phonetic, easy to predict pronunciation. So Spanish, Italian, Turkish. Some tonal languages with pitch variations, again, Mandarin, Cantonese, complex consonant clusters or throat sounds, Caucasian language, Afro-Asiatic, Arabic, Hebrew. Again, there are more choices than that. Question 8, how do you want to learn new vocabulary? Do you want many familiar words like English cognates that exist like in French and Spanish and German where we have borrowed words from each other? Or do you want new word roots but logical formations like Turkic? Turkic languages, Turkish, Uralic, Finnish, Estonian, or mostly memorization, so characters from Japanese and Mandarin and Cantonese, etc. Question 9, what kind of speaking experience do you want? Do you want a widely spoken language that's useful for international travel? Do you want a language that's used mostly in specific country or specific region? A rare or endangered language that you want to help preserve? Or a tonal language with precise pronunciation needs? When you're done, you make a tally of all the language families you checked a box for and all the languages mentioned in your answers. And then you set that aside because you'll compare that list to the next one.
The second quiz takes into account your lifestyle, personal interests, heritage connections, and access to resources. As you're doing these quizzes, it's totally fine to check more than one box. And with this one in particular, if you want to make your analysis go faster, try to keep it to 1 to 3 boxes maximum.
So question 1 is, do you want to connect with a specific cultural group or your own ancestry? You may feel like, if money were no object, I would want to travel to all of these places. But this question isn't about a temporary visit to these places. It's about digging in deeper. So check all the boxes that apply to the ones you are truly interested in committing to with your time, or you can check not sure yet at the end. So you might say yes, Indigenous or First Nations languages. You might say yes to European ancestry or classical civilizations, or you're interested in East Asian cultures, or Middle Eastern or North African. And it wraps up with Indigenous peoples of the Americas. For this one in Canada, by the way, there are approximately 70 living Indigenous languages. And in the United States, there are approximately 167 living Indigenous languages spoken today. Question 2, do you need a language with widespread global use? So you might say yes for travel, work, or international communication. Then we have suggested options. Yes, but mainly for one region. Or no, I prefer a smaller community-based language. Question 3, what type of entertainment or media influences you? Anime, manga, Japanese video games, K-dramas, K-pop, Korean culture, maybe indigenous storytelling traditions, cinemas, African music, tropical island folklore, ancient myths, epics, or historical texts. There's a whole bunch of fun stuff in this question. Question 4, what kind of linguistic challenge excites you? So you can check all that apply for that one. Maybe you want a language similar to English for an easier start, or a completely new way of thinking and writing, or a language with a logical but unique grammar structure, or highly complex structure with long words and detailed meanings, like, for example, in Indigenous languages like Mohawk. A rich variety of tonal sounds and or click consonants. So there's Nama, or there's Arabic or Hebrew. A language with a unique script and cultural context, like Austronesian, Hawaiian or Tagalog, or Caucasian, or a fascinating mix of simplicity and precision, like Niger-Congo languages Zulu and Igbo, or Austroasiatic languages like Vietnamese or Khmer.
Here are the next steps. So you have your tally from the first quiz and your tally from the second quiz. Next, you will combine them to see what your top 2 languages are, or if there is a language family that comes up the most. If your most common answer is a certain language family, but no specific languages, then you would want to cross-reference the qualities of the language within that family that interest you the most, and use the questions from both quizzes to inspire your further research. For example, if Sino-Tibetan was the language family that came up the most, then you'd look at the languages within that family, pick questions that interest you, like from the first quiz, how much grammar complexity are you comfortable with? You can ask ChatGPT to analyze, so you would actually type in, for a native English speaker, put the Sino-Tibetan languages in order of grammatical complexity. But let's say your most commonly recorded answers were Italian and Japanese specifically. How do you decide between those two? You can, of course, compare more than 2, but for the purposes of keeping the explanation shorter, we're just going to explain it this way. Here's where the final piece comes in. We've put together a detailed prompt for ChatGPT to help you complete the analysis and make your decision, and an optional set of questions to reflect on as they pertain to you personally.
You can also take questions from the quizzes and use them to drill down on facts about the languages. For example, what is a reduced sound, and does, example, Japanese have any? Do they use prepositions in Italian?
And finally, if you are feeling like you still need to know more about one or more of the languages, or just need more questions to reflect on in order to decide between 2 or more languages, you can take one or more of your resulting languages and run them through these 11 reflection questions to gain a better sense of what it might be like to try learning in your current circumstances. These questions are also on the PDF you get for signing up at the website.
So there's 2 categories, personal connection and motivation. And then the second category is ease of exposure and practice. So in the first category, the questions are things like, have you ever traveled to a place where this language is spoken? Would you like to? Are you interested in the music, films, literature, or history associated with this language? And there's 5 questions there. And then for ease of exposure and practice, one of the questions is, do you like fun things like wordplay, puns, or idioms? Does this language have any? or many? Do you live in a place where this language is commonly spoken? Are there local language exchange groups or online communities where you could practice with native speakers?
So there you go. If you want to learn more about this, I know that was a lot of information. It is laid out completely for you in the quiz and supporting materials that we will provide. If you just head on over to littlecrabpress.ca to the podcast page and fill out that sign up form, you will gain access to the materials
For free!
for free. And that brings us to a little segment where we highlight something in language, language learning, culture, or the like that we love or want to just go away. In the spirit of our respective languages, we call this segment oh la la or boo boo boo. If it's something we love, we'll give it an oh la la. But if it's something we want to put an end to, we'll give it a boo boo boo, which means no in Mandarin, but also conveniently sounds like boo in English. For today's episode, Rebecca will be sharing her thoughts.
Today I'm highlighting an ooh la la. It's a YouTube channel called Native Lang. So that's capital Nativ, capital Lang, all one word. And the guy who creates these videos makes animated historical linguistic tales. He takes you back in history to the roots of languages, and his videos are exquisitely researched. If you get overwhelmed by some of the linguistic terminology because it's very, very nerdy, just remember that the animations make it easier to surmise the meaning and follow the overall story, and at least some of the jokes. You don't have to be into linguistics for the videos to be fun because they make you feel a little bit like you're a time traveler.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's deeply nerdy entertainment. And we'll put his link in the show notes.
And now we're gonna love you and leave you with our last segment, Your Joy Builder. Before we go, we want to leave you with a quick recap, a foundational nugget that should serve as the focal point of what you take away from this episode in order to continue to build satisfaction as a language learner. Hopefully now you see how knowing which languages are related can help you choose a suitable secondary language more efficiently. If you want to be a polyglot, then you can afford to learn some languages chosen purely on vibes. But if you feel you have a limited time to dedicate to language learning, but still really want to check that box on your bucket list, then vetting your decisions from a more informed starting position will help you gain that satisfaction. We hope you have fun seeing if our quiz pack gives you a deeper sense that you chose wisely.
If you found value in today's episode, you'll find show notes and links at our website, littlecrabpress.ca, which is also home to our little freebie library, and so much more. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you tap that button to keep on breaking new ground in your language learning. Lastly, please take a moment to review the show on your podcast app, or to send this episode to someone you think could use it. It all helps us continue to build a safe space for the fluent and fluentish that is free of snobbery and filled with joy. At Little Crab Educational Press. I've been learning Mandarin for over 20 years, and I love oat milk mocha. I was going to say nachos.
Oat milk nachos. I'm so soggy. No.
Fluentish the podcast is brought to you by Little Crab Educational Press. Thank you to the language learning communities on Blue Sky, Reddit, and Instagram for sharing openly about the struggles that people have to overcome to persevere in the pursuit of becoming fluent or fluentish in an additional language. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and share from wherever you get your podcasts. This show is edited and produced by Rebecca Jewton with graphic design and support work provided by Lisa Zach, both of whom also research, write, and host each episode. The theme music is by the Canadian duo Milk Fangs. Hear more from them on bandcamp.com.
Fluentish the podcast is recorded remotely between Victoria and Vancouver, which sit in the unceded traditional territories of several Coast Salish nations, across which we are grateful to live and work.